Hello, and welcome to Opt to Thrive, episode 36 Testosterone Truths and Hormone Myths, setting the record straight with Professor Susan Davis.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Karina Sims.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sunroom. I have got a treat for you today. It is a spectacularly sunny day out there today. You're probably going to hear some of the birds chirping as we talk. I cannot wait to have this conversation that we're going to have today. It's a long time in the making. I have wanted this guest on since I started the podcast a little over a year ago, and here we are. So you're going to find out in a second exactly why this means so much to me. Because Professor Susan Davis is one of my main go-tos for accurate evidence-based information in all things hormone and menopause. So let me just give you a rundown of her credentials so you can see exactly why I have so much respect and admiration and trust in Professor Davis. She's an endocrinologist, so she's a hormone specialist with over 30 years of experience. She's not only a clinician, she's the head of the Women's Endocrinology Clinic at the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. She's also a researcher with expertise in the role of sex hormones in women across the lifespan. She's the head of the Monash University Women's Health Research Program. But that's not all. Professor Davis is also one of 5 founders of the Jean Hales for Women organization. It's a nonprofit organization in Australia that's dedicated to improving women's health across all stages of life through clinical services, educational resources, and evidence-based information for women, girls, gender diverse individuals, and the healthcare professionals that support them. She's also the past president of the Australasian Menopause Society and the International Menopause Society. She has over 435 peer-reviewed publications, and she's received numerous national and international prestigious research awards. She was even appointed an Officer of the Order of Australia for distinguished service to medicine, to women's health as a clinical endocrinologist and researcher, and to medical education. So you are in for a treat today, ladies. Let's get started. Welcome, Professor. I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your really busy schedule to be here today. I really appreciate it.
Good to talk. Good to talk.
Now, with your expertise, we could go in so many different directions, but I appreciate I only have you for a short period of time. I wanted to make the most out of our time together today. And so I'm thinking that we'll just do a little focus on testosterone. It makes sense given that you're considered one of the world's leading experts in testosterone for women. And you were the lead author on the global consensus position statement for testosterone therapy in women. So as you would know, I'm sure that you see it in your clinical practice as well, and you're new to Instagram this year, so I know that you have seen what is happening out there. A lot of women are getting their information from the internet, from social media, from podcasts like this one, and there's a lot of confusion. You can't help but feel really sorry and sad for a lot of women who are so confused in this space. And testosterone seems to make the rounds as some kind of a wonder drug, or I've even heard it referred to as the third hormone in menopause hormone treatment. So I thought that today maybe we could just kind of go through the claims that we see most and maybe just talk about really what the evidence shows. The biggest one I think I probably see is the claims for mood and well-being. So can you talk us through that one?
So I've been treating women with testosterone since the 1980s. So I've got plenty of experience in this space. And I would have patients in the past come back and say that they felt their mood had improved or they felt better on it. And so what we did in all the big clinical trials, we put very careful well-being questionnaires in. So these are studies in women. Half of them got active treatment of testosterone and half of them got placebo. And their blood levels of testosterone were really increased effectively. And across all these studies, did not see improvement in well-being or mood compared to placebo therapy. So although women feel better, women also feel better because someone's hearing them, because someone's treating them, because their stories told, but we have not been able to demonstrate a significant improvement in mood or well-being or energy or vitality or whatever we've asked when we've asked these questions in clinically blinded studies. And I think probably the best lesson learned from all of this is that several years ago, a company had a gel called Libby Gel that increased testosterone into the high female range. And they did 2 studies with a total of 1,000 women, so 500 women in each study, half who got placebo and half got testosterone. These women knew they were getting a possibility of a 50% chance of being on placebo.
Yeah.
And the placebo effect was just as good as the testosterone effect, even for sexual function.
Wow, that's amazing.
So how do you change that? I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I have heard you talk about the placebo effect in particular with testosterone, and that it seems like maybe it's even a bit bigger of a placebo effect in particular with testosterone. Is that
No,
accurate?
and look, I think people really struggle with this whole concept of the placebo effect. We did another study years ago with my master's student was a trained Chinese herbalist from China. And we treated women with vasomotor symptoms, hot flushes and night sweats with the Chinese herbal medicine or an identical placebo. Women had to mix up this stuff and take it every day. And after 3 months, the reduction in hot flushes and night sweats was 50% in the placebo group and 50% in the Chinese herbal group. And the point was, if you were going to drink this stuff that tasted awful every day, you were going to get better. And again, I can give you example after example over studies where a particular treatment, clofibrate, wasn't associated with a significant reduction in cholesterol in one study. And yet, when they looked at all the treatment groups combined, it's whether or not you took your medication. So the ones who actually used their medication, whether on placebo or active, their cholesterol went down compared to the ones who would miss tablets.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
But people don't want to hear this.
No, no. So going back to what they want to hear, one of the studies that gets quoted a lot when they talk about well-being and mood is, in particular, one of your studies. I think it was an old pilot study. So what is the problem with using that study? Can you just explain to listeners what the problem is using that study?
It was a very crude analysis. There were 17 women in each treatment arm. The possibility of a chance finding is enormous. And when we repeated that study with 267 women, we couldn't reproduce the findings. So as John Ioannidis from Stanford often says, there's a lot of research done where the findings can never be reproduced. I mean, I can tell you that cholesterol increases heart disease risk and lowering cholesterol reduces risk because every study that's done gives you the same result.
Mm.
But when you do a study with only a few people in it and get a chance finding, and you can't replicate that finding ever again, you've got to say, that was a chance finding. There's something weird about that study. It gave us a signal. It was a pilot.
Mm.
But I'm not going to go and tell women it's going to make them feel better on the basis of 17 women.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What about brain fog and cognition? What do we know?
That's tricky because we don't really understand brain fog and cognition all that well. But one study we did where we looked at postmenopausal women not on hormone therapy, randomized to testosterone versus placebo, and we used a computerized battery of questions. And we found out of multiple domains of cognition, the only thing that improved was verbal recall. So on average, there was greater verbal recall from a shopping list, which was equated to about 1.5 extra words. And again, a relatively small study, only over 4 months, and no one has ever done a study that's replicated this finding. So I'm not going to go and tell my patients it's going to make a huge difference to their brain fog based on 1.5 extra words from a shopping list.
Yeah. Fair enough. I can see at the moment that you're in the process of recruiting for another study, this one around muscle and bone.
Yes.
Around, is it postmenopausal or 55 years old? I thought was I was too young, which is, I can't say that for many things anymore, but very exciting. Can you talk us through what you're looking for there?
We're doing 3 studies at the moment. One is looking at whether testosterone has added benefit for bone health in women aged less than 55 who are on menopausal hormone therapy and who are postmenopausal. The second study is women aged 55 to 70, and that's women not on hormone therapy, to see if testosterone will improve muscle mass and function and bone density. And both of those studies are now fully recruited, and we'll
Oh,
have the results in March. We're also interested in testosterone and cardiovascular function. So we've done a study of women with signs of early heart failure. And in that study, we're looking at the effects of testosterone on VO2 max, so exercise capacity, and cardiac structure, heart structure, using both echocardiograms and cardiac MRI. So that's a very detailed study, and we're just analyzing the results. And they're all double-blind, placebo-controlled trials.
okay. So back to the muscle and bone study. My understanding was that testosterone therapy wasn't useful, but I guess you're doing the study because we don't really know. In terms of bone, because you do hear the claims that taking the testosterone is going to help with muscle and bone. So we're in the we don't know category. Is
We
that
do not know. The studies are all either too small or of too low quality or have some flaws in them, and we just do not know. We do know from one study that looked at intramuscular injections of testosterone over 6 weeks that the group of women who got testosterone doses that basically gave them male blood testosterone levels, they had an improvement in about 2 out of 8 parameters of muscle strength and function and mass, but it wasn't across the board. But they had to basically get male blood levels to get an effect. So we're looking at that because the jury is out.
great? Okay. Back to the cardiovascular study, you do see claims of cardioprotective factors with testosterone. What do we know about that?
Well, I mean, for example, if you look at all the data from the testosterone patch studies combined, which is, I think, altogether about 4,000 women, there's no evidence of increased cardiovascular disease risk, but there's no evidence of reduced risk. So at the moment, there's no, I could cherry pick the literature and I could debate for all these issues you're bringing up, either side of the table. I could debate the testosterone protects muscle, bone, and heart, and I could debate that it doesn't. And that's because the data we've got is too unequivocal. Too equivocal. We just don't know. The data's not there.
Okay. I think one of the biggest issues that I can see women kind of falling into the trap with this testosterone thing is that it makes sense. That our bodies make testosterone and it's beneficial for all of these things. And then our testosterone levels decline as we age. So it makes common sense that if you give the testosterone back, it should have all these beneficial effects. Can you walk us through what the danger is with that rationale?
Well, firstly, let's clear one thing up. Testosterone blood levels do not change at natural menopause.
Mhm.
Testosterone blood levels start to decline from about the age of 20 onwards and continue to slowly decline until about the age of 60. And from then they start to increase again, and we don't know why. And what we do know is, and our paper will be published in the next few weeks, is that, for example, sexual function in women starts to deteriorate between pre and perimenopausal. That's where you see a doubling of change in sexual dysfunction between pre and early peri. Yet testosterone's not changing. So a lot of the things people are attributing to testosterone may have nothing to do with testosterone. And yet it's just so easy to sort of, I don't know, it's flavor of the month. It's like come out of nowhere that people have suddenly claimed testosterone as this hormone that changes in women, and it's a female hormone, and It's not just about men. And if you fix your testosterone, you're going to fix everything. I mean, if you think of the naivety of that, it's sort of crazy.
Mm. So if we looked at the claims, so often it's anecdotal evidence. And it's funny, I looked up anecdotal just to see what the formal definition was. And it actually says it's not necessarily true or reliable because it's based on personal accounts rather than facts or research. So I think that says it all right there. But if you're going to treat someone, what is the problem with treating them and seeing what happens, whether or not it does improve?
Very often I will give a trial of therapy. That's fine. But I think there are several things to be clear about. If people have depression and a range of factors, whether it be PTSD, abuse that they don't want to acknowledge, just biological depression that's not due to testosterone, telling them that they're going to get better with testosterone is not treating their root cause. I think at the moment, telling women with severe osteopenia or very low bone density that's not osteoporosis, or osteoporosis, that testosterone will protect them when we don't know, is really dangerous, because these women might go on and continue to lose bone and miss out on an effective therapy. So I think telling women that this treatment will fix their problem when it's not going to, and their problem's not fixed, is not fair. And then you've got all the issues of women are paying huge amounts of money. I mean, I've heard of GPs charging for $500 for a consult. That's sort of getting up to AMA amounts for specialists. I mean, people are making a lot of money out of women's vulnerability. And I'm hearing about women putting their retirement savings into trying to feel better, going off on all these therapies and all these consultations that are not actually helping them.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that kind of a GP fee of $500.
That was
I'm
what
not
I
getting
heard
that
last
here in
week.
Denmark. Okay, well, all right. Well, let's talk about what we know it does do. Let's talk about libido. So that's the only indication really that we have to use testosterone therapy in women.
Yes.
Okay. So postmenopausal woman in particular is spelled out in the guideline.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, whether it be me or other groups, multiple groups around the world at different times have looked at testosterone versus placebo for low libido in postmenopausal women and shown beneficial effects. So when you see those outcomes done by different groups in different populations, and you keep getting the same green light every time someone does a study, be it a small study, a large study, a study of surgically menopause, naturally menopause, on HRT, not on HRT, that is what we see. There's a benefit for the majority of women. The benefit is not massive, but you do see an improvement in libido and arousal and orgasm. So that is great. In women in their late reproductive years, the problem is we don't have sufficient evidence to push this one way or the other. And that's why we're also including sexual function questionnaires in our younger postmenopausal women, and we're going to do another study in premenopausal women.
So is this one of those areas, if you have a perimenopausal woman, you've treated her hormone, her symptoms, relationships, okay, like you haven't been able to have another cause, she really wants to have a go at testosterone. Is this one of those areas that you would see?
Yeah, I would give a woman a trial, whether she be perimenopausal or postmenopausal. I'm very happy, once addressing all the issues, to give the patient a trial of therapy, but I don't, I try not to create unrealistic expectations. I think that's really important. And then if you don't have unrealistic expectations, then a small improvement can be quite a delight for some patients.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had heard you refer to the charismatic practitioner who prescribes the testosterone. You're probably going to get a much better placebo response if you tell them how great it's going to work.
Well,
All
that can
right.
go two ways, because that can have a huge placebo effect, but maybe that's a good thing. But the other thing is, we don't want patients to come back. I don't want my patients to come back and feel really disappointed. And, what's wrong with them? And maybe the dose isn't right, and do you know what? Sometimes in my experience, even after very careful consultations, a trial of therapy and you get no benefit, and then the person I'm treating really has had a bit of soul searching and feels that really has considered other factors in the situation and been able to address those other factors.
Yeah, I had that same kind of situation in my practice as well. Finding not everyone is responding to the testosterone exactly like what you're showing in your studies. You had a study, you wrote up a paper recently on the perimenopausal symptoms. I was really excited to talk about this because it can be such a tricky area. I'm still getting women coming to me who've maybe seen someone else who's told her that she's not perimenopausal because her periods are still regular, but she's, clearly having hot flushes and night sweats and there's no other cause. So tell me about the study.
So we've recruited 8,000 women across Australia trying to really understand menopause much more deeply. And we categorize women by the traditional criteria as pre, peri, and post. And peri was broken up into early and late, etc. And we were interested to see how the symptoms differ between women who are pre, early peri, late peri, early post, late post. What was the symptom trajectory and where did we see the peak of symptoms? And when we really looked at it, we found the peak of symptoms was in late perimenopause. That could be a little bit artifactual in that early postmenopausal women with high symptoms might have been not included in this analysis because they're already on treatment. So we excluded women on HRT from this analysis. But then we dug down into the difference between early peri and late premenopause. And we found that women who had any change, whether it be change in flow, heavier or lighter periods, or change in cycle length, longer or shorter, were really not different from each other. The ones who had any change and hot flushes and night sweats, whether the change was heavier or lighter bleeding or shorter or longer cycles, they were all the same. And they were different to women who didn't have hot flushes and night sweats. So the bottom line is, if you're a person coming to see me, the traditional thing would be, oh, if your cycles are still regular, even though they're almost, scant, not at all, or even though they're really heavy, you can't be perimenopausal. We're saying that's not true. We're saying that our data shows that any change in the cycle, whether it just be the pattern of bleeding, is meaningful, particularly if you've got hot flushes and night sweats.
If the flow change is subtle, does it have to be significant, like really heavy or really scant?
Well, the clangor was the hot flushes and night sweats. And what happens is everything tracks with that. So, the women, let's take our group as a whole. Where they've got change in flow or change in cycle length. They've got hot flushes and night sweats versus the ones without.
Mm-hmm.
The ones with hot flushes and night sweats have more sleep disturbance, more brain fog, more weight gain, more muscle aches and pains, more everything. So the vasomotor symptoms sort of scream the movement into perimenopause, and everything sort of tracks with those symptoms. And the ones without vasomotor symptoms don't have nearly the same degree of difficulty.
Okay. So do you ever get the patients that you suspect that maybe their sleep disturbance is from a temperature regulation issue, like a hormonal issue, but they're just not kind of cottoning on to it? Those are the really tricky ones. They might have, the joint pain, they might have, but they're waking up at 3 a.m. like the normal kind of thing that you see. They're not sleeping, they're maybe super irritable, but maybe their periods haven't really done much changing.
I think, how far back do you go to predict the change? It is tricky. So you're really saying to me, okay, you've got a person with regular menstrual cycles, the periods aren't heavier or lighter, there's no change there, and she's waking up at 3 a.m, etc., etc. If I cannot elicit anything that's not even an inkling of lack of vasomotor control, I would be looking very hard for other causes of those symptoms. And the other thing we've got to remember is not every symptom's due to menopause. I mean, the prevalence of depressive symptoms is 25 to 30% in premenopausal women. In women aged in their 20s, in Australia, 30% have moderate to severe depressive symptoms. We've shown this in a study of 7,000 women. And so a lot of women are entering their perimenopause carrying symptoms with them. We know connective tissue diseases start to emerge around this age. And so muscle aches and pains do need to be investigated to make sure there's nothing else going on. Or being hot at night, maybe there's thyroid dysfunction. So it's very important to consider all things that can be contributing to a person's symptoms.
Absolutely. In the study that you just did, you looked at a lot of different symptoms. The sleep disturbance, is that one of the things that maybe one of the early things that you saw in the perimenopause?
I just actually, off the top of my head, I think sleep disturbance was worse in late perimenopause, is my
Okay.
recollection. But most symptoms were worse late perimenopause,
Yep.
and that would go along with the hot flushes. But again, people just aren't sleeping. And I think that people are under so much stress at the moment. It's, I've had young men tell me that the most overused word in their social community is brain fog, and that's young men.
Huh, that's interesting.
Mm.
So I'm assuming that you're getting a lot of the sleep disturbance in your clinic as well. What is your approach generally to the sleep issue?
I ask people to tell me what happens when you go to bed. Do you fall asleep? What do you do if you don't fall asleep? If you fall asleep, tell me what happens when you wake up. What's the first thing you notice when you wake up? Are you are you waking up because you're getting palpitations? So do you notice, I want people to tell me exactly what they're feeling and experiencing when they wake up. And they'll say, oh, I need to go to the toilet. Well, do you wake up with a full bladder and you've got to go to the toilet, or do you wake up and you lie there and go, I'm awake, maybe I should go to the toilet? That's sort of different. So really tearing apart, step by step what goes on. And I think that reveals so much information, but it takes time for the patient to be able to tell you in their own words what their experience is. And you can pick mostly when it's the classic menopausal type symptom.
Yeah, it seems like it's that 3 a.m. one seems, or somewhere between 2 and 4. It seems to be so common, and they're going to sleep easily, and they're waking up for no good reason, like you said. That might just go to the loo because they're awake. It always makes me a little bit suspicious.
Yeah.
How many do we know kind of what the percentage is? I know there's been studies that show that women sometimes don't kind of connect that getting a little bit warm. Maybe that peak happens just before they wake up.
You know what? I don't think you could even do that now, because women have got their antennas so high up for menopause right now that I think even looking at studies done in the 1990s and comparing those today, we need contemporary data, because everybody's so much more informed or misinformed or whatever you want to say, that, I think women's experiences are very much determined about their knowledge and their expectations.
Yeah, true. Okay. So, what for you coming out of that study, the conclusion, was there anything that surprised you?
I think the finding that really the progression into early perimenopause can very much be determined by symptoms, rather than the old school version of it's all about how often you menstruate. I think that really surprised me. I expected to see a much clearer distinction between pre and perimenopause in low mood and anxiety. And that was very nuanced. Like, women are entering their perimenopause already carrying a lot of anxiety and low mood with them. So that was a symptom, that those two symptoms did not change dramatically between pre and peri, which that did surprise me. Also, that most symptoms do really resolve, particularly the brain fog really resolves after early perimenopause, or sorry, early postmenopause. Like, women in their 60s aren't walking around complaining of brain fog. That seems to dissipate. And that is very consistent with the concept that, or the hypothesis that, the brain fog is very much driven by fluctuating hormone levels rather than low hormone levels. Like if brain fog was a big deal, all the women in their 60s not on estrogen should have terrible brain fog because their estrogen levels are so low, but they're
Mm.
not complaining of it. The greatest complaint is in women in the late perimenopause when there are wild swings in hormone levels.
Yeah, very true. Excellent. All right. Well, we've just crossed over the half hour mark. Was there anything in particular that you wanted to touch on while I've got you?
I think I probably covered it by saying that not everything's menopause.
Yeah,
Look, the other thing is that should everybody be on hormone therapy? And the answer is absolutely not. And there are women who glide through menopause with no adverse symptoms. And if we measure their bone density, it doesn't really change very much. And they enjoy good health and well-being without being on hormone therapy. So not every woman needs to be on hormone therapy. Alternatively, all women with debilitating symptoms should be speaking to someone about alleviation of their symptoms.
absolutely. One of my special interests is in lifestyle management, and my pet is really trying to get women to do some resistance exercise.
I think that we really need to work on lifestyle optimization and, reducing risk factors, that kind of thing.
If we really want to decrease the rates of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, etc. In terms of lifestyle modification, what do you tell your patients? I know that losing some weight can be helpful for symptoms, for instance. What do you tell them?
Look, honestly, if hormone therapy dramatically altered the risk of cardiovascular disease, we wouldn't even be discussing it. We'd just be treating everyone with hormones. But to absolutely reduce cardiovascular disease risk is about detecting and managing hypertension. It's about healthy diet. It's about careful weight management and physical activity. I mean, it is not rocket science. And for many women, it's being able to hive out time in your week to look after yourself, because women just keep looking after everybody else except themselves. And taking hormones is not the answer to treating hypertension or exercising. You've got to do all of that.
Absolutely. Well said. I hope that you're
Thank you.
doing some self-care as well, Professor Davis. I am so appreciative of you being here today. I have so much admiration and respect for your work. I just wanted to say a great big thank you. And as a GP in the area, seeing patients, it's really important that I have access to really good information. And it's through you I've been able to find the Menopause Toolkit, the Australasian Menopause Society webpage, just hearing about these places that we can go that are accurate, that we can get some accurate information. I love seeing you on the social media. I'm sure that you probably came onto social media kicking and screaming, but your voice is so appreciated.
Oh, thank you. I did come kicking and screaming by my daughter, who was going to manage everything for me. And then she said, "Oh, Mum, I've now got a really good job and I'm so busy I can't." So that was Jean Hales has actually really helped me with that bit, because they actually do the posts for me. I
Ah,
actually do them. But without Jean Hales, I wouldn't be able to do them because I'd have to find someone to do them. But yeah, it's kicking and screaming is the true word.
well, you're doing an amazing job. Jean Hales is doing an amazing job. Are there any other resources that you might recommend for women or for GPs who are looking for more information?
The International Menopause Society has a YouTube channel, and they've got a lot of interviews where they're like 10 minutes for both the general public and for healthcare providers. And they're just quick interviews, but they've got a whole lot of stuff on YouTube that you can listen to.
Awesome.
They're
Okay.
fantastic.
I haven't found them, so I'll have to go have a look.
International Menopause Society YouTube, and you'll find a mass of them. They're terrific.
Great. Again, thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast episode. I really enjoyed having a conversation with Professor Davis, maybe a little bit starstruck along the way, but that's okay. It feels good to feel like a medical student again all these years later, and in awe of, one of the greats in in the space that I am just so interested in and committed to giving the best accurate information that I can. In terms of the lifestyle modification, ladies, listen up. Pretty soon, coming up, I'm going to have a midlife reset challenge online. It's going to be a 6-day challenge. It's a free challenge. I am inviting all you ladies out there who are, wanting maybe a little bit of motivation in your nutrition and your exercise regimes, or maybe you're a lady who's been thinking, you need to get up and do it and get into some routines, but you're struggling maybe to get into some routines. This is a perfect jump starter for you. We're going to do some educational things along the way. I'll do some live sessions where, talk about all the things that we're going to focus on from day to day. Small, achievable wins. That's what we're looking for to get you up and moving. Bring a friend, have some fun. We'll do a special little Facebook page, a private little page that you have to register to get into. So a supportive group of like-minded women all there to do the same thing. So check out the link in the show notes. Really excited to do this with you guys. And I look forward to seeing you on the inside. And if you haven't rated the podcast yet, please take a second now to give me a quick rating and maybe even a little review. I love hearing those. It's really great, as I said, here in my sunroom, talking to the air, to the birds and the blue skies. It's just nice to get some feedback, to know that, there are listeners out there who are taking it in. The numbers are growing. And so, I am getting that kind of feedback, but it's always great to hear some actual thoughts. Thank you again so much for listening. I am just so appreciative that you're taking the time out to have a listen. Have a great week, everyone. And until then, I hope you opt to thrive.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts for medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.